Hey designers, so today's tutorial is pretty simple. I'm going to be showing you how I did this simple draping technique to this skirt, and we will also have the back of the drape wrapping around to the other hip so it can have this continuous look to it. So let's get started. So my client has a pretty short torso, so this is the base that we are starting off with. Now the first thing you're going to do with the fabric that you'll be draping with is fold over the corner and start to pin at the side of the hip or wherever the skirt is going to start. Then you want to pull your fabric over to the other side and make sure it is well fitted. Once you do that, now we can start adding the pleats in the skirt. If you want to give the fabric an extra bit more support, you can go ahead and pin the skirt in the center before we start adding our pleats. So we want our first fold or pleat to start 3.5 inches down from the edge of the fabric. So that means once we create this first pleat, that fold or that crease of the pleat should be about an inch and a half or so thick. And as we pin on one side, we'll go ahead and pin on the other. Now, based on the style of design you're going for, you can either have your pleats be even throughout the whole thing, meaning your pleats are the same size and width apart throughout the entire drape, or if you like to go for a more asymmetrical vibe, you can have them be bigger on one side than it is on the other. Or if you like, the pleats could get bigger as the skirt gets closer towards the hip. As you can see, I did a mix of two of these. I have my pleats getting bigger as you go down, but also they gather up more on one side of the hip to create this asymmetrical look as well. Once you get to the desired look, then you could go in and cut the excess fabric. I typically like to give myself enough room for error, so I cut down about 4 or 5 inches, sometimes even a little bit more below my last pleat. I also like to give myself about 4 or 5 inches of extra space on the side seam of the drape too. So next you want to go ahead and create the desired fold for the bottom of this drape. Now you do not have to keep all the fabric that we just left onto the bottom of this drape. The idea of this is to see what we need to cut off. And then once you get the desired look like this, we're gonna go in and cut whatever is hanging from underneath our drape because that's just extra fabric that we don't need. Once you're done, you should have something like this, and then we're gonna go in and start to hand sew. Now the best way to do this when hand sewing is to sew through the edge of the base of our skirt. So don't focus on sewing through the edge of the drape because we added that extra fabric on the sides, but we want to make sure that we are sewing essentially or base stitching through the seam allowance area of the base of our skirt that's underneath our drape. Now we want to make sure these pleats stay in place, so what we're going to do is go in and hand sew the first 1.5 to 2 inches of each of these pleats. This part is super easy though. We are basically doing an invisible stitch in between our pleat and the fabric. Once you're done with your stitch, knot it at the back of the drape, and then you'll have something that looks like this. So now you just want to continue that throughout the rest of the drape. Once you're done, we could go in and cut the remaining excess of the fabric. You can go ahead and cut right along the edge of the base of our skirt, or if you like to wait a little bit before you do that, you can still give yourself about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of wiggle room before you cut all the extra fabric off. So now you want to remove all the pins from the other side and essentially repin them, basically taking the skirt off of the dress form. That way you can repeat the exact same steps and process on this other side. Before we move on, one tip I will give you: if you are using a very thick fabric and you have all of these pleats in the side seams, you may need to thin out your drape. This is something I talk a lot about in my course, but you never want to have super bulky seams. This fabric, fortunately, is super thin, so I didn't have to go in and remove excess fabric. But if you're using a thick fabric, you'll need to reduce the thickness of some of those pleats before hand sewing it down. Now, once you're done repeating those same steps, you can go ahead and remove the excess fabric again, and we can start working on the drape for the back of the garment. Also, here's a look at what we have so far. So I want the pleats on my drape to align as much as possible, so I'm going to start by pinning one of the back halves of my skirt pattern to the side seam of our front skirt pattern. Hey y'all, I know you're enjoying this tutorial and we're about to get right back into the video, but I wanted to take a moment to personally invite you to my couture draping course.
I designed this course for the designers who already have a great foundation. You know how to cut, you know how to sew, you know how to create, but you are ready to take your designs to the next level and actually start creating some couture garments. You want to be able to create the things with volume and structure and all these different things. Now, in this course, we have different types of projects available. We have some that will show you how to drape a garment from start to finish, and then we also have some that are going to just focus on the techniques only. That way you can really get a good mix of everything you need. Normally, enrollment is $500, but if you're watching this video, you will be able to get this course for a discount. So at checkout, enter the code ESC tutorial and you'll be able to get this course for $350. And yes, we have payment plans available too. So if you're serious about becoming a better designer, you want to grow your craft, you want to see your skills improve, and you want to get results like my students who've been able to create garments like this just from being in my program for a matter of weeks, then go ahead, click the link in the description, and I can't wait to see what you create. Now, let's get back to the video.
So we're starting the back of this the same way we did the front by folding over the corner of our fabric and then pinning it on each sides of, or both sides of our pattern. Now, the only thing that we're really doing differently for this back drape is it's going to be broken up into 3 pieces. So this skirt starts at the underbust, and so once we add enough pleats for them to stop at the waistline of the skirt, we're going to go ahead and cut off that extra fabric. Well, before we cut off the extra fabric, we want to make sure all of our pleats align on the side seam. Then we'll cut the extra fabric off about 3 to 4 inches below from where our last pleat is. And if there's any extra fabric hanging underneath that, we'll cut that off too. So now we want to hand sew what we just draped to the base of our skirt. Again, we're only focusing on the top half of the skirt right now. This is what it should look like once you have hand sewn the pleats together. See how well my pleats line up? That is the goal and what you should want yours to look like. Now just repeat the same process to the other half of your skirt back pattern. Now once you do both halves of the back, this is what it should look like. Now we can create the part that's going to drape across the back. So since we want this to line up with the draping that we have at the front, our drape is going to start on the right hip. Now again, starting by folding over that corner, we're going to pin the fabric at that right hip and then pull it over to the side. Now we will not be sewing this into a seam on the left hip. We're actually going to have it snap or maybe hook onto the hip. That way she can get in and out through the back zipper. But for the draping part of this, we are going to drape this the exact same way we did the other parts of this garment. So making sure that each of our seams line up, or each of our pleats line up with the pleats at the front. And once we're done, we'll cut off the extra fabric at the bottom just like how we did before. But we won't be cutting off the extra fabric on the left hip this time. For that part, we'll actually need to do a fitting with the client first to make sure it is perfectly fit before we cut anything. Now, once you're done, go ahead and sew the right side of the hip to the dress. We are going to have to line this this extra draping piece that we have going over the back. That part needs to be lined, but I won't be able to include that in this tutorial, but I do recommend you lining it. Now, another thing we are going to need to do is also sew the sides of our drape as well, just like how we did at the front. And also make sure you pin under the bottom edge of the drape as well. Next, since the back of our drape is movable, we want to make sure that the bottom edge of that top part or top section of our drape has a nice clean finish. So I want you to fold under that edge and do an invisible stitch along the entire bottom of the top half of our drape. Now that everything is hand sewn, we can go ahead and finally connect everything at the seams. So remove the entire dress or skirt from the dress form and then pin together the side seams. And with right sides together, go ahead and sew the skirt together at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you're done, you'll have something that looks like this. Like I mentioned before, the back of the drape we are going to line, or I'm going to line, and I also recommend y'all do the same thing. And then we'll finish it off with either snapping to the left hip or hooking to the left hip. And then you also can go back in and finish the front of the drape with either a facing, go back in and add a facing, or you can even use some type of hem tape or stay tape. Now once this is fully done, I'll add a finished product photo on my Instagram, and I may even post it on here too. But I hope y'all enjoyed this tutorial. I'll have more coming up very soon, and I'll be still adding in some vlogs too. This is how my client looked at our first fitting. We haven't added the lining yet. I'll add that soon. But thanks again for watching. I'll see y'all next time. Bye y'all.